According to Toto Wolff, Mercedes is changing the car completely because we simply have to make the jump to Red Bull and we're still missing half a second. But is that really the truth? They were awfully close to Verstappen last weekend, and the upcoming Mexican Grand Prix suits their updated car as well. As Mercedes' new improved floor, launched at the US Grand Prix, appears to have offered a significant performance increase for the team. Could they challenge the mighty Bulls during the Mexican Grand Prix this weekend? Following the race in Austin, team boss Toto Wolff stated that Mercedes had the fastest car on the grid. "I think we had the fastest car today, but we haven't optimized it," Wolff said. "I hope this performance shows up later because it's something the sport needs. We need a few good races where there's someone else fighting with Max. The new floor seems to work. In the fast corners, where at Suzuka we were terrible, we were very competitive here. It seems that the direction is right." Despite Mercedes' improvement, Toto claims that the 2024 car will be radically different. "We're changing the car completely because we simply have to make the jump to Red Bull and we're still missing half a second. And we won't achieve that with further development," the Austrian concluded. But this could be a little downplay from the team boss, as the recent update has hugely increased Mercedes' likeliness of a win this season. Let's dive into their changes and the chances at the Mexican Grand Prix. Mercedes debuted a new floor in Austin, sparking speculation about the 2024 Formula 1 season. The main goal was to affirm its development direction for next year's car, but the performance improvement was never going to be that significant since the geometry of the car surrounding the area you're developing limits the amount of modifications you'll make. If the results are favorable and stay good in the next races, Mercedes will completely implement these concepts next year. Mercedes concentrated on the underfloor leading edge, the front corner of the side pod, and the front outer edge of the floor with this update. The profile of the outer splitter appears to be pretty similar, only the trailing edges altered thus far. The most significant changes are made to the upper surface of the floor's leading edge. This has been drastically decreased in length. This lets us assume that the undersurface follows a similar profile. More of the airflow that is supplied into the leading edge between splitters 1 and 2 will be diverted out of the side of the floor, just a little bit more rearward as a result of this. Mercedes has also installed a new 3-splitter inside the previous pair. This will redirect more of the underfloor entrance flow out of the side of the floor's front corner. This means that the diffuser must function on the airflow between splitter 3 and the inner wall of the subfloor. This airflow will be decreased in volume, which means that the airflow under the car will go quicker for the same volume of diffuser, providing greater downforce. Furthermore, because the curved underfloor splitters bend this flow outwards, some of it will escape beneath the splitter's lower edge. This airflow will create horizontal vortices, energizing the underfloor airflow to the diffuser. If everything goes as planned, there will be greater downforce and, more importantly, more robust underfloor downforce. The view from below implies that the leading edge of the flooring has been elevated, but it seems it has remained at its current height for a longer period of time. The most significant modifications have occurred further back. All of the preceding is motivated by the desire to have this section of the floor functioning harder, improve the flow structure in this location, and the diffuser will become more strong. The profile of the edge below is quite similar, but somewhat longer. As more airflow is deflected away from this spot, stronger vortices form, improving the sealing further back. The little triangular splitters had to be relocated as well. These are placed in such a way that they strengthen the vortex structure created by this piece of floor. If you recall back to the beginning of 2022, when these ground effect restrictions originally went into place, Mercedes had almost none of this detail on the outside border of the floor. It was entirely dependent on getting the car to run on the ground. The team rapidly realized that this was nearly impossible. It is still critical to keep the car as low to the ground as possible, but the vortex structure operates more like a dimmer control than an on-off switch, making the car considerably more predictable for the driver. Is this advancement the solution? Well, nothing is ever perfect. It's the total of all the pieces that go into making a competitive car, and it's not weird to think Mercedes is still lacking some of those parts. We'll have to wait until next year to discover if Mercedes has truly resolved its 2022 and 2023 issues, but the signs the car is giving right now is making the Mercedes team happy. And despite being banned from the US Grand Prix, Mercedes technical director James Allison has spoken out about the success of the team's modifications. Mercedes made a mistake with Lewis Hamilton's plank, according to James Allison. Technical director James Allison discussed the scenario at the team's post-US Grand Prix debrief. The skid blocks are basically little discs of metal that are put into the plank material, he said. At the end of the race, there has to be a guaranteed thickness. They begin the race at 10mm thick, and by the time you get to the end of the race, they must be no less than 9mm. You are allowed a certain amount of erosion of that skid block by touching the ground, but no more than 1mm. Else, if your car is inspected and found to be below that 9mm, then you will have been deemed to running your car too low and you'll be disqualified. Indeed, that is what happened in our case. With Hamilton's car revealed to be in violation of the rules, the obvious issue became whether his enhanced competitiveness was due to running too low, or whether the changes the team made to the W14, which included a new floor, had unlocked greater performance. This weekend was a very cast-iron vote of confidence in favour of what we put on the car, Allison said. That gives us great hope for the races that remain, but the disqualification had everything to do with the setup and the bumpiness of the track, amplified by the fact that it was a sprint weekend. With Mercedes and Ferrari, as well as the also disqualified Charles Leclerc, openly admitting to doing things wrong when they met with the stewards on Sunday evening, Allison emphasised that the sprint weekend structure had resulted in a lack of good data. Normally in a race weekend, you have 3 untimed sessions, free practice 1, 2 and 3, in which you gradually hone the setup of the car, getting it ready for qualifying on Saturday and the race on Sunday, he said. In that period of practice, you're trying to get the car as fast, reliable and legal as you can, making sure that you're ticking all the boxes that enable the car to get through to the end of the weekend fast and in good shape for when you go into Parc Fermé. At the sprint weekend, you're under much more pressure. You have just a solitary hour at the front of the weekend. In free practice 1, you have to get the car ready for the next session, which is qualifying, the next session which is the sprint shootout, the next session which is the sprint race and the race itself. After that 1 hour, you have cast your die. You have chosen your setup and you have then got to run the rest of the weekend with the bets you placed in that 1 hour of running. That means much less time to assess things than normal and much less time to make corrective action ahead of the remaining sessions later in the weekend. Austin is a track with a very bumpy surface, and therefore you're a bit more vulnerable to bumping the car on the ground. We just simply didn't take enough margin at the end of free practice 1. When we had done our setup, we checked the plank and everything all looked fine, untouched after the FP1 running. But the results of the race speak for themselves. We were illegal, so clearly we should have had our car set a little bit higher up to give ourselves a little bit more margin. It's of course a mistake. It's an understandable sort of mistake in a sprint weekend, where it's so much harder to get that stuff right, especially on a bumpy track. But a lesson for us in the future is to make sure that we take more margin, especially at a track like that with all its bumps. Despite getting disqualified and losing the 18 points that came with it, Allison said the attitude has turned from irritation and disappointment to optimism that the W14 has unlocked greater competition. Of course, the disqualification is a significant blow, he said. It's a miserable feeling, it hurts and everybody here feels it. Everybody is upset and embarrassed to a degree as well because we absolutely don't like being on the wrong side of the rules and just lamenting the lost points. Give it a day or two and that will start to wane and be replaced by the much happier feeling, which is we moved our car forward this weekend and that's hard to do. But we did it, and we did it by a decent amount, and with 4 races left in the championship, 4 races where I'm sure we'll stay on the right side of the skid block rules, the initial feeling of hurt, disappointment and frustration will pass, to be replaced by the sunny optimism of knowing that the car looked bright on this upgrade package, and we've got 4 more races to show what we can do with it. The Brackley engineers are looking forward to additional confirmation of this development in the Mexican GP, which was a good race for the W13 last season. Because of the altitude, the W14 will suffer less with its limited peak speed. However, we won't know until Sunday whether it will be enough to overcome Verstappen and Red Bull's dominance. So, what are your thoughts? Will Mercedes challenge Red Bull this weekend? And could they really fight for a race win again? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below.